trade the obese woman to Indians. Trapper's vile scheme, mountain man's deadly intervention, trade the fat woman to the Indians. They won't know whether to be insulted or just kill her on sight. Jake Bridger said it loud enough for the whole trading post to hear. His laughter rolled through the smoky room, and the other trappers at his table slammed their mugs on the rough plank counter, howling like wolves, scenting blood. In the back room, Evangeline Harper froze over a basin of greasy dishwater. Her hands were plunged in cold, gray suds, her sleeves soaked, her apron already stiff with the day's work. She had been trying to pretend she was invisible, as she always did at Fort Randall, but there are some sentences you can't pretend away, especially when they're about you. The fat cook, Jake continued, lazy and cruel. We dress her up, slap a ribbon on her, and ride her right into a Lakota winter camp. Tell their chief she's our finest white woman, our gift of honor. Think about it, boys. They robbed us, killed our partner. We humiliate them, make them choke on the insult. The room roared with laughter, louder this time, uglier. Someone shouted that the Lakota would kill her on the spot. Someone else said they might send her back as a declaration of war. Every word landed like a fist in Ava's chest. 28 years old, nearly 300 pounds, with a soft, round face and hands cracked from lie and cold. Ava had heard every insult a man could throw at a large woman: cow, ox, pig, monster, burden. She'd grown calluses on her heart to match the ones on her fingers, but this wasn't just mockery. This was a death sentence wrapped in a joke. She eats more than she's worth, Jake said, spitting tobacco into the fire. Her uncle dumped her on us and rode east like the coward he is. Nobody'd miss her. We get our revenge, and we save on flour. That's just good business. Someone actually cheered. Ava's breath came short and sharp. Her vision blurred. She knew these men were cruel, but to hear them calmly plan to deliver her to a camp of furious warriors as an insult, just because of her body, made the floor tilt beneath her feet. Before the story goes any further, tell me this in the comments. Where in the world are you listening from right now? A cold night in Dakota Territory is about to change a woman's fate, and I want to know what place on this earth you're hearing it from. Because just as Jake Bridger leaned back, grinning, and raised his mug to toast her death, the trading post door swung open. A wall of fur and muscle stepped through, bringing the winter wind with him. Cade Wolfe had arrived. Evangeline Harper had never wanted much out of life. Just a roof that didn't leak, work that paid enough to keep a belly full, and a quiet corner where no one stared at her like she was some lumbering animal. Fort Randall had provided none of those things, but it had at least offered survival. That was more than she'd had before. At 28, Ava carried her weight the way other people carried scars. 285 pounds on a woman who had never been allowed to forget a single ounce of it. She had the kind of roundness frontier life punished ruthlessly. Broad hips, thick arms, a full face that flushed easily. She moved carefully, quietly, always aware that every sound she made would be twisted into a joke. Her parents had been gentle people, but they died of fever within days of each other, leaving Ava with an uncle who had never wanted her. He'd tolerated her for a few years while she worked herself ragged in his kitchen. But when she didn't magically get thin enough to marry, he shoved her toward the trading post with a note written in his careless scrawl. She eats too much. Make her earn it. 8 months later, She was the overworked cook, the cleaner, the washer, the woman who kept the fires lit and the coffee hot while trappers treated her like a walking joke. They joked about her weight, her clothes, the way she breathed, the way she moved. They joked because they knew she couldn't fight back. And even if she tried, who would defend her? No one in this place saw her as a person, just as labor. So when the Bridger brothers laughed about delivering her to the Lakota as a living insult, she wasn't shocked. She was terrified, because they were right about one thing. No one would stop them. No one would notice she was gone until long after her body was left in the snow. Ava swallowed back the rising panic and forced herself to keep washing dishes. Her heart hammered so loudly she could barely hear the room anymore. Then the door cracked open, and everything stopped. Cade Wolf's presence didn't merely enter the room, it filled it. The trading post had seen its share of dangerous men, but Cade was something else entirely. Taller than any man Ava had ever seen, shoulders like a bull wrapped in buffalo hide and wolf fur, his mixed Shoshone and white heritage gave him a look that didn't belong to any world. Angular features, high cheekbones, a beard hiding a hard jaw, pale eyes sharp as obsidian blades. Conversation died instantly. Even the Bridgers, loud as wolves a heartbeat ago, fell silent like boys caught stealing. Cade walked with the slow confidence of a man who feared nothing. Every step he took was measured, controlled, like he carried the wilderness in his bones. Rumors trailed him like ghosts. Half-white outcast, half-Shoshone wanderer, survivor of a dozen battles, a man who could disappear into mountains and emerge months later without explanation. Some called him a legend. Others whispered that he was death walking on two legs. He approached the counter. Vernon, the oily trading post owner, nearly trembled as he poured whiskey into a cracked tin cup. "What brings you down from the high peaks, Wolf?" Vernon asked with forced cheer. Cade drank without answering. Then he spoke, voice low, gravelly, unmistakably dangerous. "I'm looking for the nearest Lakota winter camp." The silence deepened. A few trappers shifted uneasily. Vernon tried to smile. "You planning to trade?" "Planning to warn them." That made even the fire seem to crackle softer. Cade's cold gaze swept the room, taking in every face, every movement, until it settled on Jake Bridger. The look he gave Jake wasn't angry or emotional. It was calm, final, like a hunter watching wounded prey. "Heard talk," Cade said. "Talk about some white trash planning to kidnap a woman, deliver her to a Lakota chief as a mockery, to provoke a war." Jake's face went from pale to red. "You spying on us, Wolf?" Cade didn't blink. "Didn't have to. You talk loud, and you're stupid." A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the room. Cade stepped closer, towering over the table. "You're going to cancel that plan. You're going to leave this post, today, and you're going to stay far away from that woman." He didn't name her. He didn't have to. Jake tried to laugh it off. "You threatening us over a fat cook nobody cares about." Cade's jaw tightened, not with anger, but with purpose. "You touch her," he said softly, "and I will bury all three of you before sunrise." There was no bravado, no shouting, just truth spoken by a man who'd already decided how he'd kill them if needed. The Bridgers folded. Cowards always did when faced with true danger. But Ava, watching from the doorway, couldn't breathe, because for the first time in her life, someone had stepped between her and death. Someone had said she mattered, and she didn't even know his name until that moment. Cade Wolf. Ava didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her narrow cot, listening to the wind batter the walls of the trading post, feeling every shudder of the logs as if the storm outside were echoing the one inside her chest. Cade Wolfe's warning to the Bridgers had saved her life for now, but men like Jake didn't forget humiliation. They left angry, and angry men made cruel choices. She told herself she had to leave before dawn. But where? Out there was ice, wolves, miles of untouched wilderness, and death. Around the 4th hour of the night, her door creaked open, not violently, not with drunken shouting or threats, quiet, controlled. Cade Wolfe filled the doorway. "You're leaving with me," he said. Not a question, a statement, inevitable as sunrise. Ava pushed herself upright, heart pounding. "I can't just—" "You stay here, you die," Cade said. "Maybe not tonight, but someday. Someone else will look at you and see something disposable. They'll act on it. I'm not guessing. I know men like that." Ava hugged her blanket around her shoulders. "Why would you help me?" "Because I won't watch another innocent woman get destroyed by cowards." His voice was flat, but there was something underneath, an ache he kept buried. "Pack what you need. We leave in 15 minutes. Ava stared. "You're taking me to the Lakota?" "No." "Then where?" "My cabin." Her breath hitched. "Just like that?" "Yes." "Why?" Cade held her gaze. "Because you deserve to live." There was no romance in the words, no gentleness, no softness, just the truth as he saw it. And somehow that was far more powerful. Ava dressed quickly, stuffing what little she owned into a sack. When she bundled her coat around her, Cade handed her a thick fur cloak. "I can't take this," she whispered. "You can," Cade said, "and you will." When she stepped outside, the cold bit her instantly, sharp as teeth. Snow fell like ash, swirling in the light of Cade's lantern. He led her to his massive horse, a powerful roan built for deep winter travel. Cade lifted her into the saddle as if she weighed nothing. "You ride," he said. "I walk." "No, you can't. It's safer," he cut in. "I can watch for trouble." And so the journey began. The world beyond the trading post was brutal. Snow waist-deep, wind slicing, trees heavy with ice. But Cade moved through it like he belonged there, carving a path with steady, deliberate steps. Ava followed his broad shape, trusting him in a way she'd never trusted any man. Hours passed in silence except for the crunch of snow and the low murmur of the wind through pine branches. By the time they reached a narrow ridge, Ava's hands were numb, her cheeks raw, and her breathing strained. Cade noticed immediately. "Cold?" he asked. She nodded, teeth chattering. He stepped close and wrapped a thick blanket around her shoulders, tucking the edges in with careful, almost gentle fingers. "We stop in a mile," he said. "There's shelter ahead." Shelter turned out to be a shallow cave half hidden beneath a leaning cedar. Inside, the wind couldn't reach them. Cade cleared a space, built a fire with swift efficiency, then handed her a tin cup of hot broth he'd carried wrapped inside his coat. The warmth hit her chest, spreading through her like life returning. "You do this often?" she asked softly. "Travel in storms?" "Yes." "Travel with someone else?" "No." She looked at him. The fire reflected off his pale eyes, turning them into molten silver. "Why me?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he poked the fire, sending sparks spiraling upward. "Because when they talked about using you," he finally said, "you looked resigned." Ava swallowed hard. "That's what happens when life teaches you you're worth nothing." Cade's jaw clenched. "You're worth something." A simple sentence, a devastating one. Ava blinked rapidly, surprised to feel tears swell behind her lashes. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," Cade said. "I know you work harder than any of those bastards. I know you cook better than they deserve. I know you keep to yourself, not because you're shy, but because men made you afraid to breathe too loud. I know you were willing to die quietly because no one had ever fought for you." He looked at her fully then. "And I know that's wrong." Ava brought the cup to her lips to hide the tremble of her chin. No one had ever spoken about her like that before, not with honesty, not with respect. Cade stood, adjusting his coat. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow's harder." "Where are we going exactly?" she whispered. "To the mountains," he said. "To my land, to a place where no one will ever threaten you again." There was no promise of softness in his voice, but there was something rarer, certainty. As she lay wrapped in his cloak, listening to him keep watch at the cave entrance, Ava realized something. She wasn't afraid anymore, not of the wilderness, not of the men behind them, not even of the future. She was riding beside a man who saw danger without blinking, who faced storms with steady steps, who had pulled her from the jaws of death without demanding gratitude. She didn't know what awaited them in the mountains, but she knew this. For the first time in her life, she wasn't alone. By the fourth day, when the mountains finally opened into a narrow valley carved by an unseen river, Ava was beyond exhaustion. Her body ached, her lips cracked, her fingers swollen from the cold, despite the gloves Cade had forced on her. But when she saw the cabin, small, sturdy, built of thick logs and tucked against a rock face, her breath caught in her throat. This was clearly built by a man who expected no help, needed no one, and trusted even fewer. The place looked like it had fought snowstorms and wolves in time itself, and won. Cade led her horse to a sheltered lean-to, then turned to her. "You can go inside." He said it simply, but there was something else beneath the words, an unspoken offering, a permission he did not give lightly. Ava stepped inside, and warmth enveloped her immediately. The lingering heat of a fire banked under ash, the smell of pine resin, leather, and faint smoke. The cabin was small, but everything had been built with meticulous care. A stone hearth, a sturdy table, shelves stocked with jars of dried meat and herbs, a single bed against the far wall, and a neatly rolled pile of furs. It was the first time in her life that a space felt like it had been carved out of the world just to keep its inhabitant alive. "You'll sleep here," Cade said, setting her sack beside the bed. "I'll take the floor." Ava's eyes widened. "No, you shouldn't. This is your home. I can sleep by the fire. You don't have to." "I do," Cade said simply. "You're my responsibility. Until spring, at least." She wished, just for one heartbeat, that he meant something else, that she wasn't just a burden he'd carried out of obligation or honor. But she swallowed it, unsure if she was allowed to want more from him. When Cade lit the lamps and shrugged off his coat, she finally saw the breadth of him without all the winter layers. He was enormous, yes, but not bulky. Solid, carved, a man built for survival rather than show. His arms were thick with muscle, his chest broad, his movements efficient and controlled. Scars cut across his forearms, his knuckles disappearing beneath his shirt. "How long have you lived here?" she asked quietly. 8 years. "So long alone?" "It's easier that way." Easier. The way he said it made her chest ache. Cade pulled a kettle from the shelf and filled it with snow, setting it near the fire to melt. "Sit," he instructed. Ava sat at the table. He handed her a wooden bowl of stew, rabbit, turnip, a hint of wild onion. The flavors were simple, but warm in a way she hadn't realized she'd been starved for. "You eat first," he said. The words were so surprising she thought she'd misheard. No one in her life had ever said that, not her uncle, not the trappers, not even her parents, who'd fed her out of obligation, not affection. "But you haven't eaten," she protested. "I will," Cade replied, turning back to the hearth. "After you." She ate slowly, savoring each bite. Cade waited until she was nearly finished before serving himself a smaller portion. When he finally sat across from her, silent but present, she realized something. He was watching her, not judging, not mocking, simply making sure she had enough. The next days formed a rhythm she'd never known could exist. Cade rose before dawn, chopping wood in the pre-dawn silence. Ava would wake to the thud of axe against oak, rhythmic and steady. When she emerged, he'd already have a pot of snow melting on the fire and meat set aside for breakfast. "You don't have to feed me," she said once, guilt creeping up her spine. Cade looked up from the skillet. "You work, I eat what you cook. That's fair?" She blinked. Fair. No one had used that word about her in years. Despite the cold and isolation, there was peace here. Slow, steady, dependable. Ava swept the floor, tended the fire, dried herbs, and helped Cade repair the roof when the snow grew too heavy. She cooked, and he hunted. She organized their stores, and he carried water from the half-frozen stream. She learned the path he took to check traps, the signal he used when approaching the cabin, the way he sharpened his knife with slow, even strokes that spoke of discipline rather than anger. And every night they ate together. By the end of the first week, something had begun to shift. She caught him glancing at her hands, small, capable movements as she kneaded dough. He paused when she laughed quietly at one of the squirrels dancing in the trees outside. She noticed how he placed her chair nearest the fire, how he never let her walk behind him in deep snow, always clearing a path first. These tiny gestures gathered like kindling, and Eva knew she'd been starving for kindness long before she'd starved for food. One evening, as the wind howled outside and snow battered the windows, Ava burned her hand on the edge of a cast-iron pot. Ow! Before she could pull away, Cade was at her side. He didn't hesitate. He took her wrist in his large, warm hand, lifted it, and pressed the burn gently under cool water from the basin. "You should move slower," he said. It sounded like scolding, but his voice was low, rough, almost gentle. "I was trying to finish before the bread burned," she murmured. He met her gaze then, those pale blue eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "Let the bread burn. I'd rather lose food than see you hurt." She forgot to breathe. He held her hand a moment too long, thumb brushing lightly against her skin, before he released her and stepped back. Expression shuddered once more. "It was just a small burn," she whispered. "It was you?" he replied simply, as if that explained everything. And maybe it did. Every night after that moment, Ava lay awake longer than she should, staring at the ceiling, listening to the steady, comforting sound of Cade breathing on the floor beside her. She wondered if he knew she watched him sometimes, when he checked the traps, when he repaired tools, when he sat by the fire cleaning his rifle with practiced precision. She wondered if he sensed the way her heart beat differently around him. She wondered if she was foolish for wanting more, because somewhere between the first bowl of stew and the night he bandaged her burn, Ava Harper had begun to fall in love with the man who dragged her out of hell and into a world where she mattered, a man who spoke little, but whose every action whispered a truth she was terrified to name aloud. Spring came late in the mountains, creeping through the valley in slow breaths instead of bold steps. Snow melted first along the south-facing rocks, then in trickling ribbons between pines. Birds returned, streams woke, but inside the cabin something else thawed, something more fragile than ice, more dangerous than winter. Their routine stayed the same on the surface. Ava cooked, cleaned, tended the hearth. Cade hunted, chopped wood, repaired the cabin. But beneath the rhythm, tension simmered, a quiet, electric pull neither dared name. Ava sensed it in the way Cade lingered near her without quite touching, the way his eyes softened when she laughed, the way he always positioned her closest to warmth, safety, and escape. And Cade, he felt it in the way her presence settled the storm inside him, in the way her humming smoothed the sharp edges of memory, in the way she looked at him, not with fear or pity, but with something that made the walls he'd built around his heart feel unbearably tight. He tried to ignore it. He failed. The first crack in their fragile peace came on a night when thunder rolled through the valley, echoing off the cliffs like distant cannon fire. Ava was repairing a tear in one of Cade's shirts when she said quietly, "When spring comes, do you still want me to leave?" Cade froze. She kept sewing, voice steady despite the anxious tremor beneath. "You said you'd guide me to the nearest settlement when the thaw comes, that I could start over." She swallowed. "Do you still want that?" Silence. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind shifted. Cade didn't look at her. "You should have a life, people, a future." Ava lowered the shirt slowly. "And what about you?" "I don't need a future." "Everyone needs a future." "Not me." His jaw tightened. "Not after what I lost." There it was, the unspoken truth stretching between them like a chasm. Ava had sensed the grief in him long before he'd explained it, felt it in the way he watched the horizon, in the way his gaze sometimes drifted not outward but inward to memories sharp enough to cut. "Cade," she whispered, "tell me about her." "No." "Please." For the first time since she'd met him, he looked angry, not at her, but at something inside himself. "Why do you need to hear this?" "Because I care about you," Ava said simply. "Because I want to understand the man who saved my life." He inhaled, slow and ragged. "My wife," he said. "Morning Star, Shoshone. She was everything good." The words scraped out of him like they hurt. "She died 8 years ago. Childbirth. Our son died too." Ava's heart tightened. "Cade." "I wasn't there," he said, voice cracking just barely. "The winter was hard, food scarce. I went north to hunt, came back to 2 graves." He stared at the fire with hollow eyes. "I failed them." "You didn't fail her." His voice sharpened like steel. "I did. And I swore I would never, never risk that pain again, never let anyone depend on me, never let myself need anyone." Now Ava understood, not just the aloofness, but the walls, the distance, the way he cared fiercely but silently, always one step away from letting himself feel too much. She reached across the table, her hand trembling as she touched his. "People aren't curses, Cade." He jerked, slightly startled. "Ava, you saved me," she whispered. "You protect me. You care whether I'm warm, whether I'm fed, whether I sleep safe. You can pretend you're made of stone, but you're not. You're a man with a heart that still works, even if you don't want it to." He swallowed hard, something flickering behind his eyes. But before he could answer, Before the fragile truth could rise to the surface, the cabin door shook violently. Both froze. A second pounding came, harder, desperate. Cade rose silently, grabbed his rifle, and motioned Eva behind the table. "Who's there?" he demanded. A voice answered from outside, ragged with fear. "Wolf, open up, please!" Cade's stance eased just enough to recognize it. Vernon, the trading post owner. Cade opened the door halfway. Vernon stumbled inside, half frozen, gasping, covered in snow and sweat. "They came back," he panted. "The Bridger brothers. They came back to Fort Randall. Found out you took her. They're furious, Wolf. They said you humiliated them. They said you stole what they claimed was theirs to trade." Ava's stomach twisted. "They're coming here," Vernon whispered. 3 days behind me at most. They mean to kill you and take her." Cade's expression went deathly still. "How do they know where my cabin is?" "They followed your tracks, the ones you made when you left with her." Vernon flinched. She was right. She was never safe there, and now she's not safe here either. Cade shut the door, bolting it. Snow shook loose from the roof above. "Cade," Ava whispered. He turned toward her, face carved from stone. "They won't touch you," he said. "Not while I breathe." "But they'll kill you," she whispered. "Let them try." Vernon sank onto a stool, breathing hard. "There's more. They've been telling men in town that Ava tricked you, that she seduced you, that she pretended to be helpless to get you to take her. They're spreading lies. Men believe them." Ava's breath caught. Old shame flooded back. But Cade stepped in front of her, blocking her view of Vernon entirely. "Look at me," he said. She did. "You haven't tricked anyone. You haven't seduced anyone. You've survived, and I won't let anyone turn that into something ugly." Her eyes stung. "Cade, we'll be ready when they come," he said. "You'll stay inside. I'll deal with them. But you could die. Then I'd die protecting what's mine." The words hit her like an arrow, sharp, sudden, breathtaking. "Cade," she whispered, "I'm not yours." He stepped closer, towering over her, his breath warm on her forehead. "You are," he said quietly, "even if I was too much of a coward to admit it." Ava's chest ached, but outside, thunder cracked again, the warning of a war that was about to reach their door. And inside the cabin, 2 hearts beat in terrified, undeniable unison. The storm rolled in at dawn, low, bruised clouds sweeping over the ridge, wind rattling the shutters like a warning from the mountains themselves. By the time the first snowflakes fell, Cade already had the cabin fortified, rifles checked, extra wood stacked, horses sheltered, tracks brushed away. Ava watched him move with cold, controlled purpose, every motion precise, efficient, deadly. The man who'd chopped wood beside her for months had vanished, replaced by the ghost whispered about in trading posts, the predator of the high peaks, the man said to kill without hesitation. "Cade," she said softly, "talk to me." No. He strapped on his knife belt, jaw set like granite. "Talking won't stop what's coming." "You're scaring me." "Good," he said. "Fear makes you careful." But when he finally looked at her, the ice in his eyes cracked just slightly. "They're 3 men," Ava whispered. 3 killers. 3 isn't enough." She flinched, not at the words, but at the quiet certainty in them. Cade stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You stay inside. You don't open that door for anything. Not for me, not for Vernon, not for a voice you think you recognize. You wait. Understand?" She nodded, but then she surprised them both. "Let me help." "No." Cade, no. His voice snapped like a branch freezing under weight. They want you. That makes you the danger point. I handle them faster if I don't have to worry about you taking a bullet. And what about you? Eva demanded. Who keeps you alive while you fight 3 armed men alone? His silence said everything. It wasn't bravery guiding him. It was the belief that his life mattered less than hers. Cade Wolf, she whispered, don't you dare die for me. His eyes softened, so faintly she might have imagined it. I'm not dying, he said. I'm finishing something. The sound came then, faint but unmistakable. Hoofbeats, crunching snow, slow, deliberate. They were here. Vernon shrank near the wall, trembling. They mean to kill you, he whispered. All of you. Cade didn't bother answering. He stepped outside, shutting the door behind him with a heavy thud. Eva pressed both palms to the wood, breath trembling. Outside, boots crunched through snow. A voice followed, drawling, hateful. Well, well, the mountain bastard himself. Jake Bridger. You got nerve, Wolf, Jake continued, stealing something that belongs to us. Cade's voice came back, low and calm. She belongs to no one. Garrett's voice joined, mocking. We got plans for her. Lakota still owe us a humiliation, and this time we'll make damn sure she don't get rescued. Ava's heart hammered. Cade spoke. You cross this line, you don't walk away. Big words, Jake sneered, but there's 3 of us, and only 1 of you. Cade's reply was soft, deadly. Then I should have brought blindfolds, spare you the sight of your own blood. Gunfire exploded, 1, 2, 3 shots. Snow muffled the impact, the sound swallowed by storm winds. Ava's hands flew to her mouth, a body hit the ground, then another. Silence, a scuffle in the snow, boots scraping, a grunt, a snarl of rage, a final gunshot. Nothing. The world held its breath. Ava couldn't stand it another second. She flung the door open, cold air slapping her skin. Cade stood in the clearing, snow swirling around him like ghosts. 3 bodies lay half buried, Jake, Garrett, and Cyrus. Cade's shoulder bled, dark red soaking through his buckskin, but he stayed on his feet, chest heaving, eyes wild. Cade! Ava stumbled toward him. He turned sharply. Stay back. You're hurt. Not badly. But his knees buckled. Ava caught him, this giant of a man collapsing into her arms like a fallen tree. For the first time since she'd met him, fear, not cold, not anger, but fear, shone in his eyes. You could have died, she whispered fiercely. Why? Why risk everything? His breath came in ragged bursts. Because losing you would destroy me. Her heart broke and mended all at once. Then he sagged fully against her, head on her shoulder, voice barely audible. Ava, don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, she said. Not now, not ever. The storm howled. The mountains trembled. And in the snow, surrounded by the bodies of men who'd once laughed at her life like it was worthless, Ava held the only man who had ever seen her worth. And she loved him with everything she had. Snow muffled the world for 2 days after the fight, drifting across the clearing and covering the bodies until Cade buried them at the base of the ridge. He worked in grim silence, refusing help despite the wound in his shoulder, despite the pain tightening his jaw with every shovel of frozen earth. Ava waited in the doorway, blanket around her shoulders, watching him with a heart full of fear and something far deeper. When he finally came inside, half frozen and pale, Ava guided him to the bed with no argument from him, a miracle in itself. She cleaned the wound with careful hands, her breath shaking each time he winced. I've had worse, Cade muttered. That isn't comforting, she whispered. He stared at her, brow furrowing. You're trembling. You almost died, Ava said. Her voice cracked. Cade, I thought I'd lose you. He didn't answer. Instead, he looked away, the first time she'd ever seen him afraid of meeting another person's eyes. Cade, talk to me. Still nothing. So Ava did the only thing she could. She put her hand over his. I'm here, she said softly, and you're safe now. That broke him, not loudly, not violently, but something inside him shifted, like a mountain finally loosening after years of pressure. His rigid posture eased, his hand turned under hers, fingers gripping like a drowning man holding the only piece of driftwood for miles. I haven't let myself need anyone in 8 years, he said, voice low, rough. I buried my heart with Morning Star. I swore I'd never feel anything again, and for a long time I didn't. He looked up. But then you came, terrified, stubborn, too soft for this place, and strong in ways you don't even see. You worked beside me. You endured the cold, the loneliness, me, and somewhere in the quiet, I started to feel alive again. Ava's throat tightened. Alive? He nodded once. Alive because of you. She had no words, only a swell of warmth in her chest that made breathing difficult. Cade took a long breath. If you leave when spring comes, I won't stop you, I won't trap you here, but if you stay, if you choose to stay, I'll spend every day making sure you never doubt your worth again. Cade, her voice shook, I never doubted my worth until others told me I had none. You never treated me that way. Not once. He swallowed. I want you here, not because you're useful, not because I owe you, but because I love you. The words were unpolished, abrupt, ripped straight from the scarred depths of a man who didn't know how to say anything gently. They were perfect. Ava leaned in until their foreheads touched, breath mingling in the firelit dark. I love you too, she whispered. I choose you. I choose this place. I choose us. His eyes closed, tension melting from his shoulders. When he kissed her, slow this time, reverent, almost unsure, it felt like the cabin itself warmed with them. Later, as Ava rested against him, wrapped in furs and quiet breath, Cade looked at her with a softness no one else on earth would believe he possessed. You're safe here, he murmured. She smiled, tears warming her eyes. It's my home now, she whispered, if you'll have me. I already do, he said, always. Outside the storm faded. Inside, two lonely souls, once discarded, once frozen, finally found the warmth they'd been denied for far too long. Wherever you are listening from tonight, curled up in bed, riding a long bus home, cooking dinner, or stealing a quiet moment for yourself, thank you for staying until the last heartbeat of Ava and Cade's story. Their journey reminds us that even those the world mocks, dismisses, or tries to break can rise again, finding warmth in the most unlikely places and love in the coldest corners of the frontier. Tell me, what part of the world are you listening from right now? Your comments help these stories travel further than any wagon ever could. And if you still believe in unexpected love, don't go far. The next story is waiting for you.